Hello, everybody. Today, once again, we build a circle at home, HC at home, on a shot with Jason. Jason in London. He's basically stranded like everyone else right now. Usually he works at the Savoy, and originally he is from Switzerland. So we got more or less a very interesting aspect to it because his family is still in Switzerland. And he is like in obviously a very different place called Britain/London. And with Brexit and everything else, this place is really isolated right now. Is that true, Jason?
This is actually true. Yeah, London is really, really isolated, but it's actually beautiful to see how London is. London is a very, very busy city normally. And now it's kind of quiet. So it's kind of scary as well, very, very unusual, but in the same time, quite beautiful as well. Because obviously for the first time, people really, really take time for themselves. And that in London, so that I believe never happened before.
Yeah, it's usually a very hectic and money-driven place. And
absolutely, yes. Absolutely. It's incredible. London moves very, very quickly. People around you in London. I mean, I believe everyone who comes to London gets a bit that London drive. So you obviously going to get a bit quicker. You just can't do anything about it. It's just natural. It's the vibe of the city. And just at the moment, it's completely slowed down. So it's super interesting to see. Like if you walk now through the famous places in London, you wouldn't recognize them because they're empty. So it's quite ghosty. It's quite scary as well.
All right, good. I had that sometimes, obviously, I don't live in such a very crowded place or metropolis, but sometimes it reminds me of New Year's Eve and the 1st of January, when you are early morning, when you're walking the streets in the early morning, and you get this kind of quietness, after something big.
Yeah.
And that kind of strangely is the atmosphere you kind of have right now, almost like on a daily basis. So it's kind of a real, time and everything is suspended in a way. Mm. But one thing really interests me, usually best way to get around in London, obviously, is by public transport. How does it work? Is it still running? Is it closed down? Or how do you do it? I mean, obviously, London is pretty big. You got to cover big distances.
Yeah. So first of all, I don't believe the best way to come around in London is by the public transport. So I disagree.
So what is it?
I believe it's clearly the bicycle.
All right, good. So that's kind of like when you go, visiting London, flying in.
Yeah.
And then I usually don't have my bike with me, but
no. So you have those rental bikes in the city, and they normally don't cost a lot. And I believe that's the best way, especially when it's not rainy. I think that's the most biggest case. When it's not rainy in London, using the bike is easy. But if you're a tourist, it might be a bit easier to take the public transport. I agree. So the public transport pretty after the lockdown has been announced. The public transport started to shut down. Not all of them, of course, but especially to reduce because you have less people. You don't want to encourage people to get out as well or to move, to circulate. So they stopped the most of the lines, the tube lines. You do have the essential ones still, but they run not every 2, 3, 4 minutes, but they might maybe run every 10 or 7 minutes whatsoever.
There's likely eternity in London time.
Yeah, I agree. And then you still have the buses. Buses, they connect a lot of the city. So obviously you can still have the buses, but with the same scheme. So less buses, just less transport.
All right, good. So you still go by bike?
Yeah, definitely by bike.
All right.
I mean, for example, at the moment, everyone is taking the bike as well, because again, no one is on the streets. We have actually beautiful weather with a blessed spring so far. So people tend to, and we need to do an exercise a day. So the bike is perfect as well.
So it's like a camouflage, everyone says no, I'm just exercising. I'm allowed an hour exercise a day, but they're just going from A to B. All right, good.
Well, actually, the thing is, yes, because the government tells us we are normally allowed to spend only 1 hour outside. So we don't have a proper lockdown like in, where is it, Italy, for example, where you can't go out. We are allowed to go out just 1 hour a day just to exercise. So obviously, if you take a bike and if I do a whole day on my bike, no one would obviously be able to control it. It's not the idea. But yeah, bike for the moment. I think they are the heroes of the city at the moment as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, in my experience, it's like, you know, obviously we are all kind of grounded, but like, you know, talking to friends in other places, everything, I have to say, I'm really amazed how disciplined people are actually, like, you know, kind of following these rules. And like, you know, even when they kind of, like, you know, travel around, like, you know, going by bike, you know, seeing sites, visiting friends or whatever, they usually always kind of, like, you know, very much, I mean, we are kind of like restrained in how we meet, right? It's not like, you know, hugging, high-fiving or whatever. It's just like, you know, people is always like, you know, kind of like, you know, you keep your distance. So, and that is really, like, for me, it feels so wrong. I mean, obviously it's the right thing to do, but it is so, you know, sometimes, like, you know, hard. I mean, this morning I was, like, you know, walking my dog, and I met a friend, like, you know, and he was out running, right? So, and we were kind of, like, you know, saying hello, and he was stopping, and we hadn't seen, like, you know, each other, like, you know, in a month, right? So, and it was this kind of, like, you know, awkwardly standing, like, you know, apart from each other. It's like, you know, it's so weird.
And especially the moment. I think it's all about this, the moment then, and people don't know how to react. So someone mainly who would hug you would come along and would, like, try to hug you, but realize actually I shouldn't. So maybe step back again. So it's quite a funny situation. And I was even thinking about that a couple of weeks ago, because, you know, like, obviously we are all in the drinks industry. So we all, I believe the most of us, we know the reason why we cheers is because we trust each other. Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think one of those aspects as well that we have, especially in our community, is the handshake. Obviously, giving a handshake to someone is because you trust him. Obviously, you give him your right hand, so your strong hand. So it's actually the same thing.
That weapon, kind of.
Exactly. So like, I give you my weapon. So and I think it's something that could come back as well. And at some point, I mean, maybe not forever, but people, even after the crisis, pandemic, etc., they still would be scared to maybe give hands. You know, we laugh about it, but imagine your children or grandchildren, whatsoever, could maybe live and grow up with that different type of.
I mean, it's for me, like, you know, it's this kind of, like, you know, where you don't know how to greet or react. You know, specifically about, like, you know, your home country, like Switzerland. It's always like this kind of French, do you kiss twice or 3 times? And it's always like, you know, this kind of, where I'm always kind of like, now I'm feeling like, now 1, 2, and then I'm looking out for, is there a certain one? Kiss to, you know, say hello. It's always like, that is like with the French the same. It's always like where you feel like, all right, good. I have to figure that one out. 1, 2, oh, there comes a second one. Like, you know.
I love it that you mentioned that, because since I'm a kid, I always had struggle with that. So my parents, my mom is half African, my father is Swiss. So I'm born and raised in Switzerland, but we speak French mainly. So which means as well we have my stepfather has family in France. So we used to spend a lot of time in France, in Switzerland. Now I'm in London. So all my life I was always struggling between, is it 2 kisses? Is it 3? Is it, I don't know. Until today.
No kiss at all, like in Germany.
Yeah, exactly. I spent more than half of my school time in Germany. So in Germany, there's no kisses. So it's something I've always struggled with, which is actually quite funny. So even when I moved to London, it's the same.
Obviously, you're younger than I am, but you got to picture me, like, you know, I'm a bit older, and it was like, you know, in the 80s, like, you know, greeting and kissing, like, you know, or hugging, like, you know, it was not, you know, practiced that freely as it is now in Germany, right? It would be like, you know, more like, you know, oh, they're fucking gay, right? Kind of like, you know, it was not like, you know, something that came naturally, right? But I mean, obviously it makes you very adept, and it's like, you know, very good training for your profession right now. I mean, you're cultural, like, you know, very much aware how to react on the nuanced signs of how to communicate and like, you know, bond with people. Obviously going to help you in your job. Once again, I'm pretty sure. For me, I really like, you know, something I'm kind of curious about is, I mean, because I always feel like, you know, you're one of these people who kind of like, you know, are natural, like, you know, very open, embracing, you're curious and everything. And you're still working in a place which is like, you know, the kind of like, you know, the, yeah, I mean, one of the most structured places in whole of like, you know, hotellery, like, you know, in hospitality, like, you know, working in the Savoy where it's all about stages, money, like, you know, insight, like, you know, this kind of thing. And the people going there, like, you know, expecting this.
Mm-hmm.
So they obviously they're going to be a private Jason, and then there is like, you know, this kind of professional Jason, which
Totally
is
different.
I mean, obviously it's like, you know, but I mean, people always kind of like, you know, tend to say like, you know, yeah, bartending is my life. And that's, for me, it's like, you know, when you say that, I believe it because I know how interested you are in like, you know, knowledge and all these things. But then on the other hand, I always feel like, you know, the Jason I know is like, you know, more, he's more like, you know, yeah, I mean, he could fool and play around with me, right? And then I'm obviously always, you know, dressed like a bum, like, you know, I wear my dinner jacket for service, like, you know, I do my service like, you know, in cargo pants. So that's like, you know, that's me. So it's kind of like, how would you describe it? Or is it like, you know, just my imagination running wild, or is it true? Is there like, you know, a kind of gap or?
So the reality of all those things is, first of all, I love your outfit at all time because I think it's stylish and that's the way I would walk around. I mean, look, guys, if I stand up, you know, I do have my hoodie. I had to choose one of them, so that one is perfect for me. So I'm a pretty easygoing person as well. I think especially when you do. I take another example. If you do work the whole week with a suit, you don't necessarily want to wear a suit. So if you look at me now, obviously you can't see me below camera, so I have my trainers.
You don't have trousers.
Oh. No, I have actually non-trousers, so nothing down there. I'm joking. So I have my trainers.
It's Saturday. Come on.
Yeah, it's Saturday. Jason, stand up, please. No.
Can you catch me, or can you point somewhere up there? Imagination running wild.
But yeah, obviously in trainers, I think I tend to take things generally easy. Even if I do love and enjoy to work in a beautiful environment, maybe with a bit more luxury. I do love luxury. It's something I really, really enjoy. I do love the most of the people coming to those kind of venues are that amazingly interesting people there. As well, super idiots as well, like everywhere. I mean, it doesn't really change. That's the reality. That's our job as well at the same time. So we have to be professional. Me personally, I just love it easy. I try to focus when I'm out of work a bit outside the box or outside of hospitality, outside of the bar as well, with the hobbies that I have, just to kind of balance a bit the life. Because yes, as you just said before, I do love, I mean, bar is my life as well, but it's part of my life. So for me, it's very important to say, that
you gave me already like two more questions. I guess
it's perfect.
It's cool. Interrupting you. That's like probably the worst style in an interview, just like interrupting the other person.
Go ahead.
The interviewer. But I feel like now otherwise I would forget about it because.
No, go ahead.
How would you describe, like, is luxury, like, obviously, like, when you hear about, like, there's a Savoy, which is a very impressive, like, place, and like, money they spend to renovate it, the money they dropped into like 2 bars, like more than £20 million to build 2 bars. It's going like, fucking insane, right? So is luxury just a material, like physical thing, or represented through, or is luxury, what could it be, or is your biggest luxury? Like, there obviously like different questions, but how do you define that?
So luxury is generally, first of all, a feeling. All right. I think it's very important to understand that not everyone has the same definition of luxury. So for you, Niels, luxury is having a beautiful back bar.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see?
I don't need the stuff. Like, I don't need the stuff. I couldn't drink it all. Like, definitely, I don't need that. But for me, it's like,
it's luxury. Yeah. And I fully agree. I think you have a beautiful luxury, and everyone who's doing this podcast with you or videos would agree that this is a beautiful back bar. It is luxury. Let me quickly have a look on my back bar. I do have 3 bottles who are almost empty and which I don't want to drink.
Come on over. I couldn't. Come on over. Just jump on a plane. Come on over. Don't run dry. Awesome. Beautiful. Like, it's like, as you said, like, it's everyone, own definition what might be.
Absolutely. I don't. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I mean, it's for me. It's like, in a way, it's like, obviously, like, per definition, like, luxury is like, what you don't need as an essential, right? That's like everything on top is a luxury. But obviously, we all live, like, in this kind of, like, comfortable, like, level of, like, that we do have more than one pair of shoes. We all have a bike. We all have, like, these kind of things. So, and obviously, like, your work environment, like, draws people, like, you have more of everything than everyone else, but you still have to create this, or have this kind of, like, empathy to know what kind of, contributes to their well-being and feeling of, like, that was, like, the most luxurious, like, kind of experience.
Yeah, I think you just said something quite interesting. You just said luxury is maybe things that you don't necessarily need. I would disagree on that, because the next part of luxury is what is it? Okay, everyone has his definition of luxury, but most likely the definition of luxury would be something which is a treat, something that I deserve, something that this person deserves. And at the end of the day, we always, like, we're working hard, we're doing this hard, etc. So at the end of the day, you deserve a treat, or you deserve a special moment. So luxury is connected with a special moment. So for us, for example, the way we work, we focus on giving you a special moment and a special feeling. So when you come into the bar, for example, the luxury wouldn't necessarily be the piano in the middle of the room, or the whatsoever, the golden garnish on top of your drink. The luxury would be that you do have, is an example, that you do have your Friday night with your daughter that you haven't seen for a while, and you both are going to a venue which is beautiful, with beautiful music, with beautiful drinks. Obviously, it costs more. I'm going to be fair with you. It's a 5-star hotel in the middle of London. What do you expect regarding prices? I do apologize to be so honest, but it's the reality. I mean, if I want a cheap burger, I'm not gonna go. You go to a fast food. You don't go to the biggest, best burger restaurant, and then you're gonna complain about the price. I do apologize. Like, we have available seats, and if you think it's too expensive, there are other people who want to come and to enjoy. I'm not saying I'm encouraging people to come over, or I'm not a good host, but I'm transparent with you. It's a video for the industry, so let's be honest to each other. But yeah, the special treat in this moment can be a feeling as well. So now the feeling is not maybe material, because normally luxury is seen as a material. For example, gold, a big car, a nice dress. But actually, it's not only something that you have in hand, because a feeling is something who is a luxury as well. I think to feel love, or to be feel loved, is a luxury as well. It's something that it's not, it's not.
I mean, for me, it was always, like, this kind of, like, what makes something excellent. Like, obviously, like, trying to kind of get away, like, too much from the word, like, luxury. But for me, excellence was always, like, specifically in service, was when I receive something or get something, or me as working, like, in a place, having the opportunity and the ability to actually give something on top to the order. Like, what the people were not able to actually articulate, in terms of like, what they expect in taste or flavors, or like, where they feel like, kind of like, just having these kind of, like, aptitude in service, like, that, when to change, when to pour, like, some more champagne, and then when to stay back, like, it's this kind of thing where you actually do something without being asked. And then, like, kind of the person receiving this kind of service feels like, like in a cocoon, and they don't realize that they're in this kind of bubble you're creating.
Yeah,
and like,
absolutely.
and once they leave, they go like, out in the harsh reality, they still have this kind of glow inside and go like, that was cool. Like, it's all realized in retrospectives and just like, in that moment.
But what the most of the people ignore, actually, that, we always speak about the service, or the way you pour, or why you pour, or etc., the level of your glass, of your white wine glass, or your red wine glass, whatsoever. I mean, these are basic rules, I guess, in hospitality, but the real feeling that you create in there is when you come to a table, you're in two, and you have the whole service around you. If I have a waiter who always pours my water without that I ask, always at the perfect time, the same with the wine. So basically, the idea of the whole service is that your customer don't have to ask anything, because you want to read everything in advance. And that feeling that you create in that moment is that you give the feeling to that customer that you understand him, that he's safe here, that you take care of him. And that feeling is unique. Obviously, it's not materialistic. So people would say, oh, it's materialistic. You pay money for meals. So the material is maybe the meal. It's all about the meal. It's about that moment when you're in that cocon, when you're eating, and someone is taking care of you. It can be in a restaurant, or it can be when I come to your place. If you're a host at your place, it's exactly the same. I feel great. I feel it's yours. I feel secure. That's for me a piece of luxury as well.
I mean, I would kind of like, elaborate on that, like, what you just said a bit, because unfortunately there's actually not a word for this kind of like service we do in hospitality in English, because in German we say Gastfreundschaft.
I see what, yeah.
So basically, I mean, as the first thing, I'm always trying to like, tell people that we don't have customers, we do have guests.
Yeah.
That's more than just like, receiving a good for exchange of money, like, like you do have in a shop. Because like an old place like a guest house, there's kind of like, original, like, of a hotel and like, restaurants and everything. There was a place where you were actually safe from harm. So like, from enemies, like, where you were spending your night and the robbers, like, they were outside in the woods, and it was pretty dangerous to stay there, something like that, right? So there was like no violence, nothing, and you get some food, you get food for your horse, and like, you could stay there. And this kind of like, extension of just like, service, but this kind of like, enemy-free space. An enemy in today's time can be hectic, or like, noise, or whatever, like, these things. You keep that away from them. That's what we do. So it's more than just like, doing a good service. It's like, there's an undisclosed and like, hard to pin down and name extent bond. And I've always feel like, Gastfreundschaft is like the most beautiful word ever. And it's like, it's like zeitgeist. There's no translation, right?
I agree. I mean, they use in English, they use the term hospitality for this. So I offer you hospitality, or I am hostable. Yeah, hostable. You say hostable? Yeah. That sounds awful. Yeah, I'm a hostable. That sounds awful. But it's not the same. I mean, in German, that's why I love the language German so much, because you really the way you can express yourself in German is, for me, the way I can express myself the best, because the words are so complex. You have way more words, and I understand when someone is learning German.
It's pretty tough.
It's very tough. I get it, but it just makes sense. So that's what makes the language so beautiful. It's like the word Gastgeber. Excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely.
The host, Gastgeber. And
Yeah,
Gastgeber in German is, the word is just nailed. It's perfect.
No, it actually is. It's like, it is. It's so. I mean, obviously, like, you're giving someone like something like, that's like, I totally agree. But you do speak French, you do speak German, you do speak English.
Yeah, and a bit of Portuguese as well.
Fuck you.
Thank you.
You make me kind of like, I'm almost like, envious right now. It's kind of like, I only do speak like, some, some German, obviously, some English, and that's it. So
You
that's
don't need more. You don't need more.
And I usually like, French, like, that's my go-to kind of like, way to, cover like, this kind of thing. It's always like, like, this kind of Gallic shrug, just like, and then always go like, so that's it. That's the extent of conversation in French, and it usually works pretty well. Like,
I'm pretty sure you just want to speak French because of the girls. Be honest.
I know. French is such a beautiful language. It always sounds like, even the most trivial things, like, in French, they sound so poetic. And it's like, and you go like, oh, I was just asking, like, whatever. And it's just like, it sounds so, and the extent of words, it's just like, they're so elaborate, and then they're just kind of like, trivial in meaning, but it's just like so grand. Right?
I love it that you say that. I get it a lot, obviously. Like, I'm very, very grateful. Actually, I used to struggle very much when I was a kid, because I grew up like speaking French first, then German. So I lost my French and had to learn French again, and then English, etc. So it's a bit of a awful, not awful, sorry, but a bit not really easy when you're a kid. Now, obviously, if you're growing up, it's much easier. The funny thing is, obviously, I make jokes with French people, with English people, with everyone. But I get a lot that joke that German speaking is actually the opposite. So there's seen a picture a couple of days when you see, for example, a picture of how do you say in German, a Schmetterling.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful, because in all languages, like you have Spanish and Italian, it's like mariposa. Like in all different French, papillon, so beautiful. Then you come out with German. Schmetterling.
I know.
And I love it.
It doesn't sound like, that kind of fragile creature, like, that's
exactly.
But I would say, I mean, what I learned about kind of like, language, obviously for me, like, when you kind of like, you could bastardize any language, right? And it's like, I mean, even Russian is like one of the most poetic languages, but like, when you ask anyone, like, from outside, it always goes like, it sounds like a machine gun. Right?
Yeah.
That's the kind of like, the Russian image, kind of like evil language, but it isn't. It is a very poetic, very beautiful language as well. And so it's kind of, for me, always is, it's not like, the language in itself is how you use it. And there are many people kind of like, too lazy, too ignorant, and it kind of like, then they're losing out on the depths, and it's kind of taking away the extent of the experience. It's like, you could create the most beautiful drink, and the people drink it, and when kind of like, obviously you're expecting a feedback. It goes like, yeah, well, that would be a letdown, right? And then when you have like, sometimes like, even professionals in tastings, they go like, yeah, that was so exciting. Fuck you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's bullshit.
It's not like what just happened. Like, there got to be more to it than just like saying that it was so exciting. I mean, that was it. Come on, seriously. You got to open up. You got to find the words for it.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, it didn't happen, right?
Absolutely. I agree.
So
otherwise you wouldn't ask for feedback. I agree.
Yeah, and so I always feel like, language is definitely a key. And so, I mean, the stereotypes, like, I mean, obviously we do have many stereotypes about the Brits, and like, the people of Switzerland, like, Europe is rich with stereotypes. And I always feel like there is a grain of truth to it, and they kind of help to set the picture. And then the next step you got to be open for the nuances, differences. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
you step from stereotype to prejudice. That is really bad.
That's awful. That's awful.
So, and that's for me, I know that when you're in service, you sometimes can't help it when you see people for the first time. You always have this kind of big image, and for me, it always helped, to kind of step back and be open what comes after the first image and impression I got.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same, with this kind of Schmetterling. German is not a very nice language, but then the moment you kind of dig deeper and you get to it, and you still can see the beauty of it.
I agree. You know what I really, really like? It sounds weird, but I personally really like stereotypes. I think stereotypes are awesome because the reality in all of that is, if there's a stereotype, it must have a reason behind. All right. So I'm just gonna take I don't know. Let me take, for example, the stereotype. Let's say, as an example, obviously I'm the opposite of racist, just to be clear. So imagine if you why
don't get it.
You know, it's kind of weird if you ask Nils because you're German, like. Oh, so good. So for example, stereotype number one is that,
right? It's again totally off the rail, and and we didn't even have a drink so far. We already the first thing you learn at the bar is never talk politics. And now we're talking stereotypes and me, I'm not being racist. Hey, I'm Jason. I can't even be racist.
I can't even be racist. I'm both. You know, like a bit of
I'm
both.
mixed.
Yes. But you know, when people, for example, speak about stereotypes and for example saying, black people are stealing a lot, or that's a stereotype, black people steal. It's just I don't know. And I love it. It's super funny because obviously as soon as there is a stereotype, there's a story as well behind. Okay, it doesn't matter if the story is real or not real. The reality and all of that is just beautiful because there is a story, and you share it. Normally it's a fun story as well. That's why I love stereotypes, because you have funny stories behind all those stereotypes as well. And just as well, with the idea of not taking things too serious, I think stereotypes are great.
I guess that's how do you say that? It's probably a bit of difference, this kind of so-called British humor, and taking stereotypes and working on it and making fun of it and making fun of it on your own before someone else does it. I would say that's a key to British humor. As a category, it's there's this taking something obvious and and extending it to the next level. And I guess that's helping. And as I said, stereotypes usually always kind of they give you a square one for orientation.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
Branch out to more in-depth information. And
I think the worst thing you can do is not stepping out of that. I mean, I think that's with every single single person. If I heard, for example, oh, have you met Nils? Not yet. All right. Then obviously you would have the first X words to describe yourself, I mean, it's beautiful. I get that description, and I'm looking forward, or I'm not looking forward to meet that person whatsoever, whoever you meet.
Yeah.
But the reality is still, I think you have to make your own opinion about everything. Yeah. About every single person, because you can't have someone prejudging someone and taking that judgment straight away serious, because that's so sad. I'm sorry to say. People are here to meet the people, make your own idea, and then you can judge. But before that, I don't think it's good.
Now it should be the kind of this openness and as I said, be ready for a surprise.
Yeah, right? Clearly.
So, and I mean, it's always when you hear people talking about in service industries, they're always coming with this kind of you get only one chance to make the first impression, and I always feel the last impression would actually is imprinted in your mind.
Absolutely.
So that for me, that would be my credo. I don't care about what the people think when I get in. care about what the people feel when I finish.
Leave, yeah.
The kind of the session, or when I leave a place, right? I can come in and everyone goes like, "Oh, that was grand." And after the 5th bottle of champagne, I'm just like, a big asshole.
Yeah. So where's the point?
That's gonna stay in your mind, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I
like,
fully
it's
agree.
not important that you get in and go like, yeah, I'm like, kind of like as a whatever, and then just like, spending money. Everyone so far is kind of pleased, but when you leave and you behaved like an asshole the moment you get drunk, hey, come on, you're an asshole. Boops, that's it.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
It's the last impression, which actually is really important, and you can work on that for the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, obviously, it helps when you start off like, smiling and being, friendly. That usually helps, but it depends on your nature. Like,
exactly, I was about to say, it depends on yourself. I mean, if you're not a smiley person, where's the point to smile? I mean,
yeah,
just not you then.
There's nothing worse than like, this kind of forced, like, professional.
Yeah, no, I hate it.
So, and your eyes are never reached, and like, and everyone like, they could never pinpoint like, the exact reason why they don't feel like, that was not a genuine smile. Everyone knows when you're smiling genuinely, like, kind of like, no, I'm happy.
Yeah.
So it's always like, your eyes have to kind of like, sparkle and go like, with the smile, and when they don't smile at all, just be kind of like, cautious, and that's it.
I fully agree. And here we come back to the topic that we had before, you can work in a luxury venue. If you don't give the person the feeling that it matters that this person is here, that here is beautiful, this person is going to have a bad journey, a bad trip. And you can be in luxury. At the end, you go home and you didn't have the feeling of luxury. So,
I mean, that's what you're saying. That's always like, this kind of like, definition when you kind of like, you said like, full disclosure, the Savoy is expensive. Boom. That's fine. But for me, it's always like, it's a price tag to a value. And the value is like, obviously constitutes like, many things, like, your expertise, your service, the surroundings and everything. And then like, obviously the prestige which comes with it. So in the end, there comes a price tag, and that's it. And so as long as I'm happy, and it was like, well tasting, it was beautifully executed. And I was sitting there and going like, look at this clockwork of a bar. It's just like the most beautiful thing that looks like a ballet. And like, I'm sitting here and watching it. It's most professional, top notch, boom. And then they charge like, a crazy amount of money. That's for me a good value for this price tag. And that's beautiful. It would be like, the champagne was stale, and I'm like, trying to point out that there are no bubbles left there. Kind of, so that's like, it doesn't matter how expensive this glass of champagne was, right? It's like, it just becomes kind of like, more like, disconnected from reality.
Absolutely.
Right? So, but in the end, it's like, it's always a package. And as I said, it's like, for me, it's always this kind of the price in itself, as long as the value is the same, like, I don't like, mind at all. It's just like, goes together. Like, I mean, I did have this kind of experience where I felt like, now it's getting kind of disconnected. It was like, five-star hotel somewhere in Paris, and it was like, one of the worst croissants I ever had. And that was like, that would have been disappointing everywhere, but since that was in Paris, that was disappointing. Like, on extra scale, like, kind of like, it was even kind of like, more disappointing than anywhere else, right?
It's actually sad, because Paris is often a city of references to that, which I just want to say, and obviously Paris has an amazing, good bar scene, but Paris is a bit arrogant as well. That's the reality. Or French people are. I mean, I'm almost French, so I think I can say it.
Oh, they're crazy about food. There's just like,
yeah.
And food is just like, I mean, actually there is, there's a book you got to read. It comes out in May somewhere. It's called Dirt.
Dirt. Let me write that down.
Bill, I forgot the author. It's like a very impressive book, and I forgot the author. But Bill, I don't know. He wrote a book about hooligans before.
Okay.
So not really that you expected food, but the story is in the last New Yorkers, I think it was like a beautiful article written by this guy where he described his journey to France. So he went with his wife and his two kids, little kids, to Lyon. He didn't speak any French. But the reason why he went there was his lady was working in the wine industry. She spoke fluent French. And he said, I'm interested in cooking. I do like classic cuisine. And I want to go to the Institut Culinaire de Paul Bocuse. So I want to go get a nice training in. So
I like your French accent, by the way. It's good.
Yeah, I'm trying to. It's good for a sentence, so that's it, right? So they go to Lyon, and obviously Lyon, every Lyonnais gonna tell you this, it's the capital of the world of food, right? That's like food. That's Lyon, and they have a flat and everything, and he struggles with French, and he struggles with living there. The kids, just like 2 and 3, something like that, they just go boom, speaking languages like everything, kind of just picking it up. And he then kind of goes to the place who seems to be always open in kind of a way. And there's a guy who's a baker, a boulanger, right? So, and the bakery, and he goes there and he goes I want to kind of work here. You don't speak even French. How are you supposed to work here? And he goes I'm gonna try. So he works for half a year or a year. He works in this bakery, and then he goes on to training and cooking and everything. And that is it's a very beautiful article. I'm gonna send it later to you.
Cool.
Right?
Yeah. Cool. Absolutely.
It's so nice, and the extent and the depth of enjoying, this kind of, it's so great. I mean, the best thing, obviously, in terms of understanding food and everything and perfection, it's obviously in Germany we are very proud of our bread, right? But a good bread here kind of doesn't get stale. You can keep it for 2, 3, 4 days, right? And it's still it feels good, it tastes good. It's totally different concept to a baguette, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, a baguette is made, and then the baker got a break, during midday, because no one eats a baguette during midday, right? And a fresh baguette to the evening. So he opens up at 4, and you get fresh baguette again, right?
Yeah.
So it's this amount of crust, and the whole concept is just it doesn't make sense when you're just having this kind of German perspective, but the moment you take the other perspective, it's totally perfect, right?
Yeah.
And so that's, for me, it's definitely is. And I got to write you the book, and I sent you the article from the New Yorker. It's just beautiful. It's
awesome.
Because this guy's just he's so much into these details, but he enjoys it, and the best thing is his approach to learning. That's kind of is the introduction to the next coming question. His approach to learning is what many people do have. It's when he starts it, and the guy goes we're gonna make the dough, right? So it's always the outer temperature, then the flour temperature, and then you'd have to kind of to put the yeast in. You got to have a difference of 50 degrees. The water, when it's outside, 2 degrees, and the flour got 2 degrees as well. So then comes the yeast. So the water got to have around 50 degrees. Now he then just opens up the tap and goes like this, just testing with his finger. And then he goes taking the water and preparing the dough. And the guy goes how do you know they were 50 degrees? And he goes like, do you question me? Then he goes like, do you even have a, a thermometer, to take the temperature? And he goes like, yeah, sure. Where? And he goes like, but I know. But I know it's like 50 degrees, like that. So that's kind of like, that's the whole, setup. So it really is like, it is so, he is like, he has got this kind of instinctive, natural take on, he just got the feeling for it. He goes like, now the dough is right. He just can say I know it's right. He has no, kind of, and the other guy wants to learn it, goes but how do I recognize it when it's right? He goes like, you smell it. Kind of no, all right, kids, that's it. So you smell it. Now I know it's right because you smell it. Come on, seriously. So there got to be something more specific, how many bubbles per square meter? I don't know. Just tell me the yeast did its work, and he just goes now, yeah, you feel it. It's just how much do you take? He goes just drops it in, and that's it. So that's kind of pretty cool. So it's really that he got the knowledge and the expertise. So kind of that's together makes him to really good baker, and and the guy just tags along and picks up clues, and then he gets used to it, and then he learns it. But it's just it's beautifully written, and it's really nice. So but that was the introduction to my question, because I wanted to know, obviously you got this the whole of your bag is just with things about cocktails, where you have charts and everything. So I would say I take it as a cue. You are a visual learner, or how do you learn? Do you like reading, or do you pick up information by meeting people, talking? I mean, obviously some of the grandest people in the industry worked at the Savoy, right? I mean, obviously it's a historic place, even looking back just a few years, Peter worked there, Eric Lawrence later, there's always this kind of heritage. How do you learn? Is it just that you kind of taking information by talking to people, reading, or do you need visual kind of things to pick up?
I think it always depends a bit on what you learn in that moment as well. I am definitely a visual person, and I'm a bit of an active person as well, so I don't really enjoy to sit along for long, or sit around for a long time. So now, you see already, I start to move around,
fidgeting around,
I start actually, it's true. No, the thing is, obviously it depends. If it's at work, you're going to get informations, and it's important to write things down. So I do write a lot of things down, which comes again to the part of visualizing things. You can show me something, maybe if it's hand related and so on, it makes a bit more sense straight away to learn it. Because if something makes sense, it's way easier to learn it, I guess, because it just clearly makes sense. So there's no doubt at all. Or you write things down, or you use the visuals. So it always depends a bit what it is.
Very good. If you had to choose, in terms of approaching, when you got a question, would you rather ask your colleagues or boss, or would you keep the question in mind and look it up?
It depends as well what it is. So if if we're in the middle of the service and I just don't know a spec, a recipe, for example, I would ask the first one who's next to me. It doesn't matter if he's older, younger, I don't care. In that moment, in that specific situation, there's a guest waiting for his drink, all right? And
I mean, that's probably the kind of the curse and the blessing of working behind a bar. It's always this kind of instant.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to react straight away. You have to take actions. That's the reality. We are very so the way we organize ourselves behind the bar is quite tricky as well. So we have to time every single drink. All right. So we have a specific timing for everything. So obviously things need to go fast. If you realize that you don't get an answer, you always have a folder where you can look up and so on, but it takes obviously a bit more time. Then if I know it's something weird, for example, I'll give you an example. The other day I've heard that if you chill a champagne glass, for example, okay, I mean, you put it in the freezer so it's ice cold. If you pour champagne afterwards inside, it kills the bubbles apparently. Okay, something I've heard, something that I'm going to look up, because if I hear something like that and someone says that, I'm not going to question too much, because that goes quite in a scientist. How do you say it? Scientist?
Yes, scientific.
Thank you very much. Oh my God. So it goes more in that way. So then I prefer to look it up.
You need to practice your your conversational skills.
I agree. I
You
agree.
need to
Yeah. Lockdown conversations.
Right on your bed next to someone else, like that. No, I think actually, I couldn't give you a scientific explanation. I would just say, in my experience, it is the case. That's the reason why I usually do only take champagne glasses with ice cubes and just go like this. Or when I do have some 10, 20 people coming in, and I know I'm gonna serve something bubbly in advance. It's always ice, and then just some water. So you get a kind of a cool structure. Yeah. That usually helps it. And then obviously what always helps with bubbles is when the product in itself is cooled nicely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, my kind of and what I have to say, I'm not the biggest fan. It's got something to do with my limited space here. I'm not the biggest fan of chilled glasses that you have them in a fridge in a froster.
Yeah. I can understand, it's not, it always depends for what you need. It's not necessarily necessary, but it's an amazing addition, especially for short drinks. That's my personal opinion. If I can get a martini, so I don't like my martini ice cold, in sense of I don't like the Duke's style martini where you have the bottle in the freezer, and the vermouth is in South Arabia, so not here with you, so you can't use it. So this kind of martinis was just quite frozen. It's not really my type. But if you do a nice stirred down martini and you serve it in an ice cold glass, I think it's amazing. So it always depends on the drink, I think.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's always obviously, as I said, chilling glasses, with cubes and water, it's usually very nice.
It's effective enough. It's effective enough, clearly.
So that's usually for me, it's a very satisfying result.
I fully agree.
Apart from that, are you more if you had to choose, are you more, no matter what situation, just a Manhattan or more a martini type, of drinker? More clear or more clear are both drinks, but more brown spirits, or what are you going more for?
So I have to admit something first. So I'm in London now since 2 years, and before I was not a martini drinker, and I was not a Manhattan drinker as well. So that's something that really came up in London, especially the martini, because I believe London has amazing martinis. They just understood martini, which makes sense. Manhattan as well, which is a bit more American, I would say, but I love whiskey. So both would be a very, very good choice. It depends on the mood, but a bit more martinis than Manhattans, I believe. Even if I prefer more whiskey than gin, so it's a bit weird. But it's that aperitivo drink, I mean aperitivo, short, clear, sharp, and that's it. Let's be honest, there's nothing like a martini.
How is your perfect recipe?
It depends on your taste, obviously, but we would follow around a recipe of 3-1. So 3 parts gin, vodka, whatever, and
it's pretty reasonable. Yeah,
I think it's not an extra dry martini, but it's a pretty dry martini, which is beautiful.
For me, this kind of whole topic about the extra dry, it's just way blown out of proportion. Just
I think it sounds stupid, but for me, there are people who order martinis without any vermouth inside. So, for me, that's not, it is a martini if you want to, but in my personal opinion, it's more it's a vodka or gin stirred down. Of course, you add some bitters. That's maybe the only addition.
I mean, in the end, it's like, now we're not here to lecture, like, our guests.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Like, not patronize and everything.
Absolutely.
But for me, it's like, a good martini cocktail. And I mean, I do like, I have to admit that, like, for many people, it's almost like, sacrilegious. It's like, you don't do this. But I do love medium martini.
Mm-hmm. Like the wet martini, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand
like
that.
almost like a 50-50, like in the Pegel
Yeah,
Club.
absolutely.
Where you have like this, where you have vermouth, and I do love a martini, like, made with some, like, Bianco vermouth, like, as a Capano.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Example. And then nice, beautiful. And then just like for me, a lemon zest usually just like, gives this kind of spark.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect.
So
I'm really like, rich type of, like, where you already go, like, all right, good. I do have this kind of warm spice. I do have this citrus.
Yeah.
Then I have this kind of light, almost like a cloud hanging over it. Like, it's always like reminding you of everything else, which is far more intense.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I drink my martini, for example. So my martini, again, I'm pretty easy as a person. So maybe it makes sense. I just would go for a dry martini. So 3 parts gin, simple gin, like a Tanqueray or Sip Smith is perfect for me. A part of nice vermouth in it.
My favorite.
And you see, like, very easy.
Yeah, like
very easy.
As you just said, like, I mean, apart from Hayman's, which is a London dry gin as well, but usually when you look, like, when people do talk about gin, I always feel like kind of lost. I mean, obviously I'm like pretty conservative and old. Like, that moment I always feel like ancient. I always feel like, Tanqueray for me, it's pretty decent and, like, reliable.
Absolutely. I think
I love it.
absolutely.
Perfect. So it's kind of like, and that is like, and then all the others, and they're coming up with, like, what is supposedly, like, making it so special. I always feel like, yeah.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. No, like, it just works. It's decent gin. It just works.
Yeah.
What would be your garnish for your martini? You said lemon before. Is that correct?
No garnish. I mean, definitely would just, like, express the oils. No garnish. Just like, a clean, beautifully shaped glass, like, and then I'm done. Like you usually drink, or what you usually order. So then it come up, like, as one goes, like, I go for a skinny bitch. I go like, all right, good. What about, we're talking not about you, like, go to drink, but, like, serious cocktails. If you order a cocktail, at least give me this, right? So the next goes like, all right, good. I would go for, like, a dirty martini. I go like, I can do the best dirty martini ever had.
All right.
It was like, 3 parts gin, 1 part vermouth, and then just like, a bar spoon olive brine and a bar spoon Jägermeister, and I stirred a expressed lemon zest with a drink, and then, like, expressed another one, like, and I gave just like a touch of olive brine on top as well, like, stir one, then like, enhance, like, there's a flavor coming out. So it was like this mixing of the flavor of the olive brine with the lemon zest, and the Jägermeister in it gave, like, it took away all aggressiveness. Was like kind of like, like covering everything, and just like, it's this kind of smoothness, and you had this warm spice, you had this kind of tartness coming, like, from the vermouth, where you have this kind of like, wine, like, this kind of the different level of bitterness to it. Was beautiful.
You know that I really, really would love to have one of those now.
Oh, Jason, I mean, I extend, like, an offer to come over, like, you don't take the bike, just come on over. Stay. That would be nice. So, awesome. I mean, that was for me. That was a nice one, because it was for them totally unexpected, right?
I agree. It's not particularly in order that you see that often. I mean, or out of the blue, Like, I have to be honest. Like, I do love olives. I do love martinis, but I don't understand why I don't like dirty martinis. So the problem is, probably because maybe I didn't find the right dirty martini. Even the dirty martini we do at the American bar, it's not really to my taste. So I'm still trying to figure out which one is the best dirty martini that I can get. So probably I will pop into yours.
No. We're gonna give that one a try. That's a definite. Like, no, I keep that in mind. Next time I see you,
Yeah, that would be awesome.
that's gonna be easy. So for me, kind of like another thing I'm always like kind of curious about is I mean, you hear people like always talking about like now we've got so much time and like we do kind of like have that many opportunities, and I don't want to be cynical, but I do question that the people actually do use their time. Because I always feel like many bartenders are very good at getting discipline through like someone tells you what to do. They're hardcore workers, like only slept 2 hours, boom, they get up and they do the shift, right? They have no problem, like they can do this. But the moment they have not like this kind of structure and kind of like these like usual surroundings, it just feels like you got to kick them like go like what about not playing like I don't know, some hardcore shooter games or whatever they come up with, like just having this. I do have to read about that, or I do have to do some sports, these things kind of like do you have like in your usual like schedule, like during a busy week, do you have something which is carrying over in this kind of like less structured times, or do you find yourself like some new structure?
You mean now during the lockdown, or
during lockdown, like what kind of like what worked before and what is working now in this kind of like very special circumstances? When you kind of like felt like that is an addition I might like use in later times as well when everything's back to normal.
So the reality is, through the lockdown we all have a lot of time. Normally when we work we do not. So obviously I guess I'm speaking for a lot of people that every one of us had, first of all, with the lockdown, maybe to calm down a bit and to enjoy a bit our free time, which I think is essential. But at some point, obviously after a couple of weeks, you need to start to structure a bit your time and so on, which is not really usual, because we bartenders, hospitality, we work quite a lot, I would say. So having that much free time is a bit of a blessing, but can be a struggle as well, which I can understand. I think for me personally, it worked really, really well. At some point after a couple of, so after the first week, started to make my plan to see what I'm actually going to do every day. Of course, sometimes you end up not having a perfect plan for the next day, or you end up actually doing nothing the next day as well, which can happen as well.
I mean, that's the idea of plans. Like,
absolutely,
they do look good when you read them, and like there's a moment reality sets in. Like usually every plan goes like boom.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's fine. I mean, as I personally, again, like we said before, if I visualize or how do I learn things, so I write things down, and that's the same with my to-do list. So I do have my list, what I wanted to do in that period, and a lot of those things got done. The most beautiful part now is, because we have that time, we can do actual things which take a bit more time, or even way longer. Can be a project whatsoever. So that's a bit what I'm trying to follow at the moment. So as soon as we're gonna restart to work normally, I will have those projects who are going to run actually just next to my side. So I think this is going to be a bit of a challenge as soon as we start again to try to keep these things up that I've started in those weeks. It's you never know exactly how it's going to be, but at the same time, it's an amazing opportunity. So if you don't try it, you will never get it. If you try it, you have a chance. Let's see how it goes. And even if I have to start to work again and I have to put my project again on the side, or even to finish the thing, at least I've learned in those weeks what I can do out of an idea. And it doesn't mean that I cannot carry on with the idea later on.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like what this time is teaching us is, on the one hand, patience.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, as you kind of like know, I would say that's something like, positive. I mean, I experienced that for me as well, is you have sometimes to kind of like, your expectations, they do get a reshape with reality, right? And that's
Absolutely.
not a bad thing. Like, I mean, it always sounds kind of like, we are striving for, I did this many things. And sometimes it's kind of like, it is enough when you just like, achieve that, right? And so I would say, like, this kind of, as you said, like, making a plan and then like realizing, yeah, was a nice plan, so it didn't work out, right? So I actually wanted to do. That's not bad. I mean, if you probably wouldn't have had the plan, you wouldn't have done the other half as well, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
kind of like it's always like, probably finding this mixture. But going back to London, what are you missing out on most during this lockdown period?
Okay, so as soon the lockdown started, which was now maybe 4 weeks ago, what's the day today? The second, maybe now the fifth week. We're on the fifth week now. So when the lockdown obviously started, we all had to stay at home, and we all had a bit of time. We had a beautiful weather as well, and in London you do have a lot of football pitches around. Which you could actually use in the first weeks, but I think from week 3 they locked down as well all the sports places, because people used to hang out over there, and obviously too many people would basically surround an area, which I totally get. But we do have a little small pitch of a football just next to my place, so you just play 3 versus 3. And I have a lot of flatmates, so the UK rule says you're not allowed to go outside with someone else except with the people you live with.
You're locked down with a whole football team.
Exactly. So for us, we played from week 1 to 3. We played for 3 weeks, almost every single day. And yeah. And
Coaching for an extended lockdown, I'm going to move to London. That sounds
this was incredible. This was amazing. You cannot imagine, because the thing, like you said, like, now we have time, all right. And I feel like, this first time in your life, maybe, and maybe the last one as well, that you're not working for X weeks, even month, all right. So that would be normally before you started school, so when you were a little kid, or when you're 65, you know what I mean? So, so people who don't take the lockdown positive, man, I don't understand, because that's a fucking hell of a ride, man. You have an amazing chance to basically have time for yourself. So if you don't use it, I'm so sorry, man. That's not good for you.
I mean, do you know where I just felt like, reminded that your roots definitely are in Switzerland. You always have like, what the rules are, and then you know how to kind of like, find a way around it.
Yeah, I think I've started maybe too young with that.
You're so fucking like, definitely, that's like my kind of like, my stereotype about all things like, Swiss, like, you definitely are Swiss. Like, that's like, that is so deeply ingrained, that's a rule, and I find a way around it.
Absolutely. I think it's super important. Like, it makes it so positive.
All my roommates. So, I'm roommate from Jason, sure.
Yeah. Well, you would not believe, we had a couple of times the police obviously coming to the pitch, and you have to identify, etc. So yeah, I think at some point they got a bit pissed off. So I think that's one of those reasons why they shut all the pitches down. So it's sad, because like, I had, for the first 3 weeks, I think one of the best weeks in my life. So that's what I miss the most. Like, I just want to be able to just go out and play football with my flatmates. I'm not doing something wrong, you know what I mean? So I'm not killing anyone. I'm not passing the virus to anyone else, because I live with them anyway. So since they locked down, since they closed the pitches, that's the one thing that I really, really miss.
All right, good. Cultural things in London you would like, recommend everyone should have seen, like, like a museum, gallery, restaurant.
I think generally, the best thing about London is all the museums, or the most of the museums, are for free, or for a very, very cheap price, which is amazing. So if you have the National Geographic Museum, you do have the art gallery just next to the Savoy as well. You have beautiful spaces, spots where you can learn a lot of things. So generally, London is just amazing for that. If you are into that, I can understand if you're not really necessarily into this piece of culture. Otherwise, there's another piece of culture, which is the bar culture. I personally see our bar culture in London as a piece of museum as well. There's a lot of history behind. If for example, we take the Savoy is a piece of history. I'm not saying that because I work there, but it's the reality. Like if you have a chance to, if you're in London, you should be there. You should see the venue. It's beautiful. I'm not saying necessarily you have to have a drink, do whatever you want, but I would highly recommend, and it's not only the Savoy. I mean, you go to the Duke's Hotel, for example, go to the Connaught. Not because only of the name, it's because the venues are beautiful. There's a lot of history behind. These are museums themselves as well. I call them hospitality museums. So there's a lot to see in London. I love photography, so there's a lot of nature as well.
Something interesting what you just said, like obviously many people do look to London as the next trendsetter, and you are actually pointing out this kind of like history, and you call it a museum, which usually sounds like this kind of dusty, like boring place.
Yeah, I understand. I was not always a fan of museum because they are quite boring as well, and I get that. But I think a museum of a bar, I mean, if you're interested in something, you would never find it boring. So I think that's the reality. It doesn't matter which topic it is.
Yeah. And I guess like what you just said is like, finding. For me, it's always like, people usually do search for something, but they're not open for finding something because like, finding something is more like, it's like, something like, being open for something involuntarily, like, affecting you, positive, negative. And then like, that might be kind of like, the thing was actually is the most important thing. Right.
Mm-hmm. I think as well, before you find something, often you should know in which direction you want to see and seek, because if you don't know what you're looking for, it's way more difficult to find what you actually want.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess it's kind of like now in your personality and your interests.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it's like there's a value and like this kind of worth which is represented by some things. Like that is. I mean, obviously, like I do have some like very old books which are kind of like probably like worth a lot of money for me, but totally insane for others.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense like to someone else. And the same like handbags, they drive women crazy, and we go like oh yeah, it's a handbag, right? Kind of like it's not touching you. So I guess it's kind of like when you do have this affinity.
Yeah.
Like to something you are open for finding, or like automatically like searching, right? Kind of seeing it in these places. I guess, but anyway, probably like now we could keep on talking, Jason.
I wish.
And I do have to kind of like finish with the toast, and like because I really.
Oh, 1 second. Yes, that looks much better.
I don't know if you can see this glass behind the background. You can see it.
It has a deer inside.
Damn, yes, that's it.
I'm so good. Oh, cheers, Nils. Amazing.
It was my pleasure, Jason.
You are a legend. Thank you very much. Really, really appreciate that talk. Thank you.
So this is basically like the end. I got to thank Jason. Hope that he can get back to regular work at Savoy in London pretty soon. And obviously the nice thing, like we forgot that, like in our introduction, that means I forgot about that. I met Jason first when he was still like as a member of the HC of the British Circle in Switzerland. So he's like more or less a transplant, like the HC transplant. Kind of like, he was like one of the first who made this kind of concept of international, like being and staying connected. he lived it before it was kind of like, written down. He was already like part of it. So
Thank you very much.
That's like one aspect. The other is obviously, yeah, we all like, that's for me really important. What I do believe is, I mean, obviously we do use like, social media, like, to kind of stay connected and everything. And we're using this kind of technique and these things, but the real social fabric of not just like society, but of like the bitter circle and of mankind, like is for me meeting and interacting. And I'm really looking forward to like meet all of you again in person, and hopefully like very, very soon. And Jason, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for that big chat. Yeah, just take care of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.